Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are, a lovely podcast session ahead of us. Got somebody who's been on before, but it's been quite a while, and I've always had problems with the surname, so Yulia, I hope you don't mind. My attempt is coming. Yulia Celetaria. Yes? Happy days, that's a great start. So Yulia is the head of logistics at EarlyHealth Group, and honestly, seriously, you impressed us all with the first podcast that we did, and also at every conference where I've seen you speak. Your passion, your enthusiasm, engagement is second to none, and really lovely to see you doing what you're doing now. So perhaps you can just tell us a little bit, because we're doing Tell Us Your Story. If you can tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and a little bit about EarlyHealth Group.
Sure. Or maybe I rather start from the beginning of my aviation journey. So I worked for a large freight airline for 17 years, almost 17 years. And 1 year ago, I have joined EarlyHealth Group. So when I joined the company, and EarlyHealth Group is focusing on the clinical trial services around the world. And when I joined the company, it was quite funny, because for the first couple of days, I kept saying tonnage and then tons, and then really was thinking about the large volumes, whereas the CEO of EarlyHealth Group, Dan, was always reminding me, Yulia, we're not talking tonnage anymore, it's vial. And it really, the first week was a bit challenging for me, but I have realized that vial can be as important in value, but also important to the patient as the full load of 747 freighter. Therefore, that is even my a little bit of my theme for some of the conferences, from 747 freighter to a vial.
No, it is, it's I mean, it is funny, isn't it, in our industry, how sometimes we take the way we talk and what we focus on as the be all and end all, but when it comes down to personalizing and thinking about people, thinking about that vial which changes and saves so many lives, it's that awareness of the products that is so important when you look at the whole logistics chain.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely correct. But also, I have realized that sometimes it's more challenging. Now, since I joined EarlyHealth Group, I have realized that logistics for a vial can be more challenging than really plan and load and transport full 747 worth of cargo. Because clinical trials are happening in such remote areas in the world, Trinidad and Tobago, and some remote areas of Argentina, where it's really difficult to deliver the product. And I have to plan it very precisely. It takes a lot of time for the planning, and you need to choose the partners really well to make sure they can deliver the product.
And that's a lovely segue now into something that I talk a lot about, probably too much, but you've now, it's almost as if you've moved now from cargo to care, and your re-emphasis is on that end delivery, that end impact, where you have to care about what happens either on the trial, which is going to affect so many people, or the individuals themselves that are going to receive that particular vial or whatever it contains. So your perspective now, I'm not talking for you, but I'd love to ask your opinion, is in the old days, okay, you were more concerned about just the pure logistics of getting something there at a certain time and using a carrier. Now, with the criteria, like you said, of being confident that that party you choose can do what they say, I think in today's business environment, it is ever so more important.
It is indeed. However, Chris, there is two sides of the story. When I was working for a cargo airline, I did see the actual pharmaceutical products for any type of cargo from the airport till the airport. When I was establishing a pharmaceutical product in the airline, I was always speaking, think about the patient behind this box, right? Think about who will have this product in the end of the day. So we need to make sure it's delivered in a proper manner. Now, I really do not have this transparency and visibility. I sometimes have almost zero visibility on where my product is. So I know who the patient is. I know that he needs to get this product in a timely manner, because EarlyHealth Group is focusing on cancer clinical trials and rare disease. So time is of an essence. Therefore, for me now, I lose a little bit of a visibility. However, I know who the actual patient is, who the product is going for.
Yeah, and it really puts your focus, I would imagine, in a very, very different sphere. And it's I mean I think your experience in your previous life and your experience now, it must be a real complementary and sometimes agonizing situation. So with that in mind, everybody talks a lot about the GDP, CEIV. I mean, obviously, it's great to have certain practices because that's how people know that if somebody is either certified or accredited or actually practices what's expected, that you've got a better chance of achieving what you now need to do. What's your opinion of them both now from the position you're in?
I think the concept is great, and I think that standardization is what is required, obviously, in the transportation, in the logistics in general. However, it's the actual execution or implementation of the practices that I'm concerned sometimes. I do see that CEIV certification is a great thing. However, if you just get your certificate, hang it nicely framed on the wall, just to show to the auditors, that's not enough. If you do not follow the actual standards and you don't have the proper QMS in place, and you do not have the risk analysis and things like that. So GDP, from this perspective, I think puts a little bit more pressure on the companies, but it's not a bad thing. I think it really forces companies to implement a better quality management system and processes. Because like I said, just to have a certificate is really not enough. You just really have to have the procedures in place in your company.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think when I was talking about the pressures of the current industry, you've got people leaving, you've got experience that's gone from the business, you've got such reduced amounts of training, and people do rely on technology. Technology is a great help, but at the end of the day, it's about people, practices, and performance. And if they don't get the support at the front end, you are going to end up with a greater chance of risk during and at the end of the whole process. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I do also think that, of course, the companies are getting the certification, let it be CIV certification or GDP license. But if we talk about the personalization or personification of the procedures, I think that some of the companies are going above and beyond, and not in the positive sense. I know that we are all about tailor-made solutions now and personalization processes. It's applicable actually to the healthcare. We all know the cell and gene therapy that is really booming right now, but also in the logistics for pharmaceuticals. However, I see now that some of the companies, freight forwarders, airlines, trucking companies, they do try to offer the SOP particular for the customer. So it means that SOP is actually losing its sense. It's not standard anymore. It's special procedure for this client, special for that one. So you have like 25 different SOPs for different customers. So there's a huge strain on airlines, ground handling companies, ramp agents to really follow these SOPs. And then I, in this case, as the shipper of the pharmaceutical products, have more concerns of what's happening with my product.
Exactly. And not only just with your product, they're getting different, well, as you know from your previous, they're getting different SLAs. And then, it's so hard for the staff to know that on a Monday in the afternoon, you put your hand on your head, and then Tuesday morning, your finger in your ear, and then Wednesday, you hold your nose. It's opening itself up for more risk. Now, personally, I think handling agents need to be stronger and need to be more convincing with the fact that they have their own core SOPs, and anybody who meets those or that they're good enough, that's it. But if you go over and above, then you should pay extra.
I agree. On top of this, we now have different companies that are offering either in-house or outsourced platforms for risk analysis, for booking, for so many different features.
Yeah.
And I think the major problem also for the airlines, for the handling companies and others, is those systems are not even communicating to each other sometimes. They're not co-integrated. You know, we have multiple platforms on the market, but those platforms are sometimes really are not well coordinated between or not co-integrated into each other. So yeah, I mean, technology is developing, but I think sometimes we do have this oversaturation of technology as well, which also must be more standardized, I think.
Yeah, no, 100%. And can I ask you, in your upstream influence or upstream choice, how do you go about ensuring that, from your experience and what your company now needs, that you influence the decisions of who gets used and why, whether that be a carrier, whether that be a handling agent, whether that be an airport alternative? How much influence or how much leverage do you try and inject into that process?
That's, I think, where my airline experience comes into play. So we have been developing a very thorough, very good lane risk assessment.
Yeah.
I was calling it Pharma corridor, where each station was evaluated. The risk factors were incorporated into this process. So I knew which handling agents are, which capabilities do they have, which airports, then ramp agents, what are the processes at each airport, and so on. So I could pick the proper route. Now I'm using this data in the current company as well. It helps me a lot. It stresses a lot of partners that we work with, because I know what actually happens in different airports.
Yeah.
Not many things have changed, actually improved. Some airports, of course, they do develop quite fast. But I do see that secondary airports are still not used really well, and that's why they don't really develop maybe well because of this. So I do use my past experience, but I also do have, together with my quality team, a very thorough qualification process of each service provider we are planning to use and to add into our service portfolio. So yeah.
Okay, no, that's great. And can I ask you, do you actually cross-reference and purge into not what they tell you that they've got, or not what they tell you they've done, or not tell you which carrier has audited them and how many audits they've had, etc. But do you actually look at the validation and verification side of what they're doing?
I do, but of course I check all the, let's say, the technical part, but I also do check what is happening in reality.
Yeah.
And I also know, I think, what are the questions that need to be asked. If the service provider is telling me that they have a 24/7 control tower that have full visibility, but then they're telling me that the tools that they're using is Excel for the control tower. To me, it's not 100% visibility and not 100% integrated process. So then, of course, we will need to do the test shipment to see how it goes. Most of the times it will go fantastic. You know, the first couple of shipments are going really well. But then it's just a matter of practice. You know, if you see in 3, 4, 5 shipments that things are not as promised, then you understand that the company really do not have maybe the proper quality management system or the process in place or SOPs.
Exactly, and that's where I actually find it very, very interesting. Is, you know, whether or not the people on the floor actually appreciate what's being told to them from above, and whether or not the people above, they don't just take the validation from floor up, but they verify back from top back down again to see what's actually happening on the floor. And if they don't do that, then this, like you said, virtual control tower or full transparency isn't true transparency. It's just something that's either in, like you said, an Excel spreadsheet, or it's what's being extracted from the system, but you're not getting the practical 4 eyes verification that that's exactly what's being done.
But I think there is a reason for that. In my head at least, there is an explanation for that. I think it was at Pharma in Lyon in France earlier this year. I had a very interesting conversation with one of the European airlines. Then there were a few freight forwarders and a couple of pharma companies at the same discussion, the same desk. And the airline was saying, you know what, we need to understand which exact pharmaceutical products we are transporting, because then we can create the product, the proper process for that. Whereas the freight forwarder was saying, you do not need to know what you're transporting. And I agree there. You just have, you're offering a product to the market. I can do 2 to 8 pharmaceuticals, or 15 to 25, or active or passive. And that's what you have to actually adhere to, right? So just to maintain these kind of temperatures. But I think I agree and disagree with both. I think there have to be a collaborative approach where airlines, freight forwarders, airports, ramp agents, trucking companies, who else, data logger companies, packaging solutions, they all need to sit at the same table and speak on what is actually required. It's not a commercial conversation, because that's a sensitive topic. It's just really purely operational, technical discussions. And I think that's what's still lacking a little bit in the industry.
Yeah, totally agree. And where I was coming, where I was going to come to with one of the next questions was, I'm in touch with a lot of packaging companies, you know, and what they're able to do now is fantastic. And because they know how many, you know, excursions from criteria that's required happens, and also with weather and disruptions, etc., they're building that into the packaging offer that's available. And if people appreciate the risks of the industry, even though it's such a wonderful industry, then that should direct them to the type of packaging, not looking at the cost of the packaging and then trying to make sure that it's achieved upstream. So if they all got together and agreed on the realities, the practical realities, not the theory for just gaining contracts and business, but the practical realities, then even the investment in the whole process would change a little bit, I think, because so much investment in pharma and perishable storage and etc. In my opinion, it's a bit of a paradox, because you want it in and through as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and all this, you know, vacuum and just in case. I think it's better to focus on having the correct packaging for the risk, for the lane risk, and then making sure that the process is effective, consistent, standardized, and it goes through as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. I do have conversations, because of course, major or most of the packaging providers that are currently on the market, I used to be working with them in the past before. So I continue, of course, my contact with them. And they are doing a fantastic job. Now I'm no longer using too many of active solutions, active containers, because of the volume. You have clinical trial, you have a small clinical trial kit that needs to be delivered to a very remote area, somewhere to the patient. So of course the volume does not allow us to use active containers too often. So we're using single shippers, single boxes, or maybe reusable, but the small ones. And sometimes the solution providers, packaging solution providers, they are providing to me a full report on average ambient temperatures, how many hours it will perform, and how, you know, what is the best solution for that. It's really great service, because yes, I know how they are performing, but they have all the experience, expertise within their company, and they can really provide me a good piece of information to relieve some of my stress, at least for the part of the packaging along the route. Yeah,
and it's amazing how it's developed over the years.
Of course, and also how these companies are trying to integrate into various platforms. I think that's also amazing. There is a way to go still. Of course, there's a lot of things have to be fine-tuned, but I think it's a really good direction.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And now coming to the close of this particular session, what challenges do you think are ahead, and also what wonderful opportunities are ahead?
Challenge. I think the main challenge will remain unbalanced network. It have always been like that, and it will remain like that. And I think the big opportunity for the unbalanced networks is usage of secondary airports, smaller airports. because we all know that now there is no problems with capacity whatsoever, but there are times where the conflicts, Red Sea conflict or Suez Channel incidents are coming, or strikes at the seaports, and then there is so much pressure put onto the main airports, on the main trade lanes. And we have experienced it during the COVID, and I think that's something that maybe people need to put a little bit more attention and focus into the secondary airport to make the network really a little bit more balanced.
No, wonderful. I totally agree with that. And then what opportunities do you see coming or developments?
I think it's AI and these emerging technologies. However, I think we all have to be a little bit careful, because at the moment we need more effort and more people to control this AI and new technologies before they will be actually very useful and can be replacing, well, or enhancing control towers, and really have to have this end-to-end visibility in the proper sense of it, not what some companies are trying to demonstrate. So the actual end-to-end visibility and quality control.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to delve deep when somebody gives you a smoke and mirrors presentation on transparency or various control towers. It's so important to make sure you dig deep there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yulia, it's an absolute pleasure, honestly. Every time I listen to you, I could listen to you for ages. Okay, the passion, enthusiasm, and engagement is infectious. I wish you great success, and I know you're going to do some special things to come. So really, thank you so much for sparing some of your valuable time, and we look forward to seeing you again, whether it's at a conference or maybe another session.
Thank you very much, Chris. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Always. Thank you.